My name is Eric Skwarczynski, and you're listening to episode number 10 of Gut Reactions. On this special two-part installment of Gut Reactions, I'll be talking about a true crime story that's captured interest like few others, leading to countless film interpretations, including the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho, and Silence of the Lambs. But I'm not alone today. I'm joined by two hosts from Everything Trying to Kill You, Mary Kay McBrayer and Maegan Brooks. For this first episode, I'll be laying the groundwork for our conversation by having a more general dialogue with Mary Kay and Maegan about the genre as a whole. Mary Kay is a belly dancer, horror enthusiast, sideshow lover, prose writer, Christian, and literature professor from south of Atlanta. Mary Kay is also the creative nonfiction editor for Madcap Review, a semi-annual online journal of art and literature. She's currently working on her first full-length novel about America's actual first female serial killer, but until then, you can read her essays at the Santa Fe Writers Project Quarterly, Book Riot, and the Blue Shift Journal. Maegan is a longtime lover of horror, true crime, and the strange. As well, she is an avid dancer, fast car enthusiast, thrill seeker, craft beer connoisseur, and self-proclaimed nerd. But by day, she is a behavior specialist in Atlanta, Georgia, with a background in clinical psychology. Her research focuses on the function of human behavior, aka why people do the weird things they do. She's known to psychologically overanalyze every movie ever made. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
I'm so excited. I feel like I already know both of you for like a really long time because we've talked about nonstop since we've all become acquainted. So it's been good talking, and I think I pretty much did a whole podcast episode through Facebook Messenger over the last 2 days. So
yeah, it was great.
My apologies.
I loved it.
So
that was our dress rehearsal.
Yeah, I think it was a good way to test it. So before we get into the topic at hand, I know we all have a lot to say about that. I just want to kind of introduce our audience to you both in a segment I like to call Spill Your Guts. I think I need to add a squishy sound effect in there.
You do.
I don't know. Not that sound effect.
I mean, if you need me and Mary Kay to just make squishy noises,
can you do that just so I can see if it works for a few... Yeah. That's okay.
He's scrapping this episode immediately. He's like, goodbye.
I might not use that, but don't be offended. So, how did you two find each other, and what led to Everything Trying to Kill You, which is one of my new favorite podcasts?
High school dance team.
Yep.
Okay.
We did.
We were on dance team together in high school.
That's true.
It was my senior year, so I was one of the captains.
Okay.
And I remember being like, oh, I hope that she's good so she can be my friend. We can be on team together.
And that was great.
Really
and then she left me.
Control.
And then I took her captain spot.
Nice.
I did not leave. I graduated high school. It's the law.
She left after the 12th grade.
Choice.
So was she a good dancer?
Me or Mary Kay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Really good. She was, in case you wanted to know, she was in the Walk It Out video, or was supposed to be.
That's Andrew's favorite thing to tell people.
Now walk it out, walk it out, now walk it out, walk it out.
I was in it.
It's my favorite thing.
What is the Walk It Out video?
DJ Unk's Walk It Out. You've heard the song. Everyone's heard the song.
You have to have heard it.
I'm going to sample.
Maybe it's a regional thing, actually.
I don't know. It might just be from here. But I was in it. I got edited out, not because I wasn't good, but because I stuck out, because I was the only girl of my sorts in the video. So unfortunately, but if you watch very closely for me, you can see me in wide shots, and you can see like from the side, like you'll see my hair flips, and you're like, I'm like, that's my hair. But
so your hair flips are on point. That's good.
I'm still there.
Well, great. So you say to your guys' parts, where are you currently located right now?
I'm in Atlanta. I'm on the west side of Atlanta by the Georgia Dome. Not the one they just blew up, the one they built right next to it that looks like a Yoshi box.
It does.
It just kind of floats like a ghost.
It looks like a giant geode in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
Nice. And Maegan, where are you at?
I'm just north of Atlanta right now, but next month I'm moving to like East Atlanta over in the old 4th Ward section right outside Midtown. You're nodding like you know.
I'm just nodding my head
mingos.
because I'm from California.
Like
I know nothing about where you're at.
What part of Cali are you from?
I'm in Southern California. I'm basically in between Palm Springs and LA. So I'm kind of like the drive-through. So, so you've seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah. I live in San Bernardino. I know where you're from.
Oh, so you know exactly where the dinosaurs are
I know.
from Pee-wee's Big Adventure? That's right where I'm at. So what led to starting this podcast? So dancing to a horror podcast. What was the jump there?
10 years went on in between from like when you graduated.
Yeah.
And then one day, I don't remember, like something just made me think of you, but we hadn't spoken. Not like because we were on bad terms. It's just we both, like, I moved out of state.
Right.
You had gone off and done your thing, and something just made me think of you. And I was like, I'm going to message Mary Kay. And we met up like the next
It was
day
so cool.
and ate like, was it not fried? Yeah,
Cheese.
It was something weird.
Cheese.
Something that I
Lots
don't
of
eat
cheese.
anymore. But
A lot of cheese.
drank
Cheese
some
is a
good
really
beer
good meal choice. So
and just hung out and caught back
Yeah,
up.
and then we started talking about like some of our favorite movies. Oh, we made it a joke first.
Well,
I think it was like, we're so funny, we should have a podcast.
Yeah, and then
we were
You
like,
were like, I just want to get paid to talk about horror movies.
So was it something that
Yeah.
you guys were into in high school, with elementary? What was kind of your first introduction to the horror genre?
Megan was way earlier
Oh
than
yeah,
me.
I was.
Megan was chasing aliens as an
It's
infant.
true. I was born into the world of horror. My dad, who was my favorite person and my best friend growing up, that's the reason I like the music that I like. I like fast cars and all of that stuff. He was an avid horror fan. So I remember very vividly being in elementary school and far too young to watch it and to not even understand it, watching Evil Dead and all these other horror films. And so I've just always been intrigued by creepy things. I've never been one to scare easy. So I was born and molded, Batman reference, by the world of horror.
That's awesome. And so, Mary Kay, you merely adopted the darkness, I'm guessing. So
I did. I was scared of everything when I was a kid. And then I remember my dad being like, you cannot live like this. You cannot panic every time something crazy happens, because crazy is going to happen to you. And so I would like get in trouble for crying, and he'll be like, well, the worst thing that can happen is that you die. And I'll be like, yeah, I guess that's a pretty good point. So I remember that conversation really vividly. And then I also remember having those scary stories to tell in the dark when I was like 9 or 10. Do y'all know these books?
Absolutely. I own them still.
Yeah, I have my original copy. Do you have them? Eric?
no,
You
I'm
have this? Or did
familiar
you-
with I'm familiar with them, but my horror introduction was a lot later. So, I totally missed the Goosebumps train. Like, I caught maybe one episode of Scooby-Doo as a kid. I mean, it took me a while to get into it.
Oh, I also on the podcast that you did with your mother, when she was like, my introduction to horror was Bible stories, and I was like, of course it was. I didn't even think about that as being like a horror story, but there's like so much stuff in there about like people doing bad things and then being punished eternally.
Oh, it's
and I didn't even think about that until I heard what she said.
What
I
a
was like,
wise
she's right.
woman.
She's
so
right.
it's so
Yeah.
And my mom was actually, so she's a teacher. I'm in her classroom right now. Growing up, she taught my classes history and all that. So she talked about all the crazy, horrifying stuff that's happened in real life. But she also taught from maybe 4th to 6th grade. She taught my it wasn't Sunday school. It was like our Wednesday Bible study for kids thing. She was always the one that would flip to. If she had to teach the kids, she was like, okay, so this is the story where a guy gets a spike through the head from this person, and this is the story where this really fat guy gets stabbed and his guts literally come out, and
Gotta
there's a
draw
lot of
'em
poop
in.
coming out. Yeah, it's amazing. So I guess she was a good introduction person. But on the flip side, I couldn't watch R-rated movies for a long time, and then get into high school, and then I was like, hey, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, those don't have ratings. So
I'm gonna
technically,
watch 'em.
I'm watching those. Oh,
You didn't
Evil
break
Dead.
not even one rule.
No, I didn't. So, and it's funny because I may have talked about this on the show before. It actually led to me. My first theatrical experience was the Evil Dead remake, because it came out like a month
yeah.
after my 18th birthday, and I was like, it's been real. I've abided by the law. I'm going to go see Evil Dead as my birthday present to myself. But no, my mom doesn't shy away from the grody literature. So really
My
cool
kind of
stuff.
woman.
All right. So Megan, you're a behavioral. Oh gosh, I've had a spelling error in my notes. Here we go. So Megan, you're a behavioral specialist, and you have a background in clinical psychology. So you're much smarter than me. How much of that do you bring with you when you sit down to watch a film?
Gosh, all of it. All of it. It's not a lie when I said in my bio that I psychologically overanalyze every movie ever made. Especially, like I said, what I do as a behavior specialist and what my background in research is all the functions of behavior. So without getting too textbooky on you, there's 4 functions of behavior, and that's just why do people do what they do. Is it for attention? Is it to meet a sensory need? Is it to gain access to a tangible? Or is it to escape or avoid a situation? It all comes down to one of those 4 things. So every time someone does something, I'm just like, why? Why are you doing that? Why is this the choice you made? Ooh, I bet you did this for that. So yeah, I'm always questioning why people do what they do.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly.
Do you take it another layer deeper and you ever watch something and you're like, why do I enjoy watching this person's head get smashed into a million pieces?
Constantly.
You just sit there at night, just staring at the glowing screen, thinking, what caused me to
What
like
amuses
this?
me about watching somebody get a chainsaw through their abdomen? Yeah, I do question that, but I think, there's a whole group of people that are also just super into true crime. I'm one of them. I think a lot of this all came together because of My Favorite Murder. And there's 18 billion subgroups and Facebook groups, and that's just become their own little cult or own little family called Murderinos. Sure. And it was just kind of comforting, I guess, to know that there were this many other weirdos out there that can't really explain why they're so into or entertained by the idea of true crime or the strange or horror films and all that. But for some reason we are. And I always contemplate that. And I think I was briefly talking to Mary Kay about it because one of our upcoming episodes is on Raw. And I still haven't watched it yet. And I just read the description of it. And I was like, this is going to be the toughest movie for me to watch. Toughest movie for me to watch. Because it's animal cruelty and meat consumption. And I'm a vegan. Because I just can't do it.
It's really...
I know there's more to it than that.
I know. Fair. No, it is, but there's no animal cruelty. There's not because they're veterinarians. So, there's dissection, but it's not cruelty towards animals.
I guess. I read some reviews on it and read some parts about hazing and horses and other things. But even seeing a dog dissected on a table is going to twist my stomach. But then I told Mary Kay, and my things, I was like, there's really something to be said that is almost unwatchable to me, but watching somebody get hung up on a meat hook, I didn't bat an eyelash on.
That is a weird dichotomy.
It frequently.
Because I always... Okay, so I watched Cannibal Holocaust, and my favorite deleted scene from the podcast is explaining to my mom what Cannibal Holocaust was. I was like, she's like, is it something you I was like,
no.
I don't want to live in a world where I know my mom watched. I said it's in Clockwork Orange territory for me. Yeah. I'm feel kind of weird discussing.
Knowing you've seen it.
But no, it's funny because people talk about the animal cruelty and Cannibal Holocaust and that being so, and I was like, they were pretty messed up to all these tribes living in the Amazon, minding their own business. I don't know. It's kind of,
for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. And I don't I hope this doesn't end the podcast, but I don't have a super strong affection for animals at all.
Neither does Mary Kay. It's okay.
Neither.
It's just
and I'm not an animal person.
I can empathize. I Am Legend, I cried when he killed his dog, but because of what it was doing to him, not because of the dog.
Right.
Yeah, so I have a hard time getting.
I step on my dog's paw and I'm going to cry.
Wow. I will say.
Well, I don't wish them ill. I just don't. I'm not particularly, like you said, I just don't really connect with them very well.
Okay, so I want to come back to talking about true crime and the psychology of that.
Yeah.
But Mary Kay, I want to ask you from your professional background. So you're a lit professor and you're an author. So how does that affect watching movies?
A lot, honestly. I feel like we just recorded Evil Dead our episode about Evil Dead, but I was like, I couldn't even enjoy it because the whole time I was like, that doesn't make any sense. There's a plot hole here. Why I don't care about these characters. There's no development. There's no narrative arc. There's no payoff at the end.
They never established convention.
Understand the convention that they're trying to establish. Yeah. So, basically it was just me being this is not just for Evil Dead. It's any movie that I can get hung up on writing quirks. where I'm just like workshopping it in my head. Like, you really missed that opportunity. Why didn't you do that? Don't you have like a team of trained professionals that you trained to like find these opportunities for you? Like, why aren't you doing it? So, I mean, that is a big thing. Like, it keeps me from enjoying movies like in a regular way sometimes. But also, I feel like I appreciate them a lot more like when they are done really well.
Sure.
Because I know you said you just watched Silence of the Lambs for the first time, and I'll watch it over and over and see something new every time I see it, just because it's so tightly written, and it was based on, I mean, not based on, but like they consulted the Robert Ressler, like the FBI criminal profiling guy, who like one of the guys who like pioneered that research, and so it's very authentic, and so it leaves me wanting more. But not in a way that like they didn't give me enough. Just that like I'll be thinking about it 3 days later in the grocery store, like, oh, is that what he meant? Like, is
Like
that
The
what
Shining.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like that.
No.
Well, The Shining did that for me with the book, but not with the
Sure.
movie.
No, it's kind of like a mixed camp with every horror movie, but it seems with every like mainstream, like The Exorcist, The Shining, even Silence of the Lambs, there's people that like are obsessed with it, and then there's people that just don't care at all. And there's never like I feel like with all the standout horror movies, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's no one that's like, oh, it's good. You know what I mean? Like it's always
Nobody's halfway.
it's like either rabidly
There's
against
no
it or
middle ground.
rabidly for it.
There's no moderation. Yes or
Yeah.
no. Like it's a
Okay, so I have to ask you 2 more questions about the author side, because you essentially sound very similar to my mom's personality.
I really liked listening to her on your podcast.
You're like,
It's like, I want to be her
could she
friend.
do more
She sounds
episodes
fun.
and maybe Eric not do? But I was nervous doing it because she's very like, I'm not saying I can handle an intellectual conversation, but she's very like, oh, it's like this Russian author from, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. So I was worried she was going to do an episode. People would like listen to it. I'd get a ton of downloads, and then they'd be like, oh, she's like not a regular person on the show. But no, you sound like very much her personality. I think me and Megan are like, she's like my spirit animal in the sense of like,
For sure.
I can sit there and watch Sleepaway Camp 2 any time of day and like just turn my brain off and enjoy it. Megan's looking at me like, Sleepaway Camp 2 sucks. What do you? but no, I can sit there and watch like the trashiest horror movie ever, and then I can like sit there and be
Still
like,
find enjoyment in it.
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and I can enjoy, like, I'll sit there and psychoanalyze The Shining all day long, and then like,
Preach.
yeah, and then I'm like, Evil Dead, let's go. So final question to kind of get you guys like where people can identify with a team. They can pick Team Megan, Team Mary Kay, Team Eric.
Ooh,
who has the
we're
best
making
taste?
shirts.
I do want a shirt. I want like a Fright Rags official shirt. So what film, if you're going to say, okay, this is my personality, this film most closely represents everything I want in a horror movie. All the best elements of horror are summed up by this movie.
Mary Kay, do you already have one? I feel like you do, and I feel like I already know the answer. You do.
I'm sure
Is it
you
The
do.
Witch?
Yeah. Yes. It's
Really?
The Witch.
What went we out into this wilderness to find? Leaving our country, kindred, our fathers' houses. For what? For the kingdom of God. Let us pray.
It's The Witch. It's the one that, I mean, yeah, it's really divisive. It's like the others, right? Like you either love it or you don't
It's
at all
incredible,
want it to
and
exist.
it's beautifully done.
I love it as well.
It's,
Yeah.
you do?
I
Oh,
love it.
good. Okay. So we're all on the same team.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yup.
It has that, it's, the writing is super tight in it. Like everything gives you just enough to like leave you wanting more, but also not totally disappointed that you don't have more. I don't want to give away the ending or any spoilers at all about this because if you haven't seen it, I really need you to watch it. Like it's very good. It's beautiful. It's really well done. The acting in it is spot on. And one thing that I like that is not really a spoiler because you find out within like the first 10 minutes of the movie starting is when I sat down to watch it, I was like, well, the twist at the end is going to be that there is no witch, because that's the history that we have of that time period, is that a bunch of people were persecuted because they were different, and there was no witch. I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, there's a witch. Like, it's real.
It's really a witch.
And it just escalates from there. Like, if that's like not even your big reveal that there is a witch, like it just keeps going. And it also, like, again, every time I watch it, something new, crazy unfolds, and then I'm thinking about it for the next week or whatever. So that's I feel like that's one of the best ones I've seen.
Cool. Megan, what about you?
Good one. Gosh, if I have to only pick one, I'm gonna go with Old Faithful. It's probably the horror movie that I have seen the most. I'm gonna go with Night of the Living Dead.
All persons who die during this crisis, from whatever cause, will come back to life to seek human victims.
I'm telling you, they can't get in here.
Solid.
It's a classic, and it created its own subgenre. It broke rules that didn't even exist yet. I don't know. It's suspenseful. It's gory. Everything that I want in a horror film. I don't have a beautiful backstory like Mary Kay does.
No, that's fine.
Well,
I was just looking it up to make sure I was thinking about the right thing. I got it. Okay.
No,
Yes,
I think
this is the one I thought of. Okay, I'm sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. No, I think both choices I can totally... I don't like when people are like, my favorite horror movie is The Purge. I'm like, okay. Like, it's fun, but like, I don't see a lasting... where you could talk about,
film.
you know. So, Night of the Living Dead, The Witch, I think both of those have so much merit to be up there in the top. You know, even if they're not in your top 10, I think you should be like, oh, I get why it's in your top 10 horror movies. And Night of the Living Dead, it's funny because it's not my favorite of Romero's movies, but then like whenever I'm doing a list, I feel like I have to put Night of the Living Dead at the top just because it started everything. It's like you have to give the credit there, even though I think Day of the Dead's like, I mean, that's like just...
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
But you don't get that without Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, none of these other great films would even exist. So I think that's what you said, the reason I put it.
It's your prototype.
Yeah, it's your... Yeah, exactly. Your litmus test. I think The Witch is like a really good choice as well because I think there's so many ways to read into that movie, even though it's pretty cut and dry with what happens, its plot. I think it's really interesting to watch and put yourself in the shoes of each character and say, is my dad right for doing this? Because every time I watch it, I'm like, well, looking at it from like a religious perspective, I'm like, well, the dad is, apparently there's some kind of thing he finds to be very wrong in the church he's in. So is he right to stand by his conviction, even if it means starvation? I'm like, yeah, okay, I see his point of view. And then I'm like, he's kind of,
I see it.
I'm like,
I get
he's
it.
kind of a jerk to his family here. But then I'm like, should the family be following more bravely? Like, there's so many ways to look at it.
Right.
It's really interesting. It's funny because it's also one of those movies where I was asking you guys in the Facebook message group, like, what's your, this thing always scares me, and trying to nail down what it is. So for me, I don't know what it is, but it's always movies that people are like, that's not scary. Like The Witch is not something like a lot of people are like, oh, that's such a terrifying movie. But that's a movie like after
it scared me.
Yeah, after I watched it, I was like turning all the lights on. Like it was like I felt like an idiot because I was like, I'm an adult, like I'm a grown man, and I just watched this slow burn horror movie. But it always feels like it's these slow burn. Those get me,
Those
and then
are the
people
ones
are
that
like,
give you time to think.
The slow burn. That's exactly right.
And then people are like, man, you know, like The Exorcist is so scary. Like I couldn't sleep, and I'm like, but The Exorcist didn't get me the same way like The Witch did. You know what I mean? Even though I think it's there's no comparison between The Exorcist on a craft level. But it's just really odd. I guess I'll answer this question as well. Yeah, my answer always changes. Okay, because when you guys were talking, then I was like, should I pick favorite, best made movie? Because best made is a whole other conversation.
Go favorite, not best made.
Okay.
Go favorite,
well, my favorite that I can rewatch all the time is The Shining. I'm sorry, Mary Kay, but that's it. But
it's fine.
But it's something where it's something I don't know what it is because it's not. It's just something that's mesmerizing. Where like the minute it's on, I'm like I have to watch every frame of the movie. But I think the movie that as of late hits everything for me is Devil's Candy.
We've come to the place where we joke about the idea of the devil. But that is Satan's lie to distract us from the reality of who he is.
I don't know if you guys have caught that yet.
Yes.
I haven't seen that yet.
So
All the yes.
yeah, so Devil's Candy, like, it's okay. So basically, what it is, it's a battle between good and evil. So you have Ethan Embry's character, he plays like this dad and his family, and it's your pretty traditional setup. They're moving into this big new house, and then there's a side plot of this man who's hearing these demonic voices whispering to him, and the only way he can get rid of the voices is to play music very, very loudly. So he plays like this heavy metal, like just as loud as he can to try to block out these voices. Anyway, whenever something happens that interrupts the music and he hears them, he starts doing horrible stuff. And those two stories merge in like a really fascinating kind of parable. I have a whole theory about what that movie's about, but I'd like to talk about it after you watch it. But it's very on the nose, which I do like in my horror movies. I love Romero's movies. I love like the political satire. This is very obviously about sexism or racism or consumerism, or I like movies like that. But it also has a lot of subtext where a lot of people I've talked to and say, oh, it's obviously about this. They're like, what? I just thought it was like a heavy metal exorcist. I'm like, no, that's not even close to what it is. So it's really good. And it just hits like from the music standpoint. Like I'm not into heavy metal, but I can get down with that. I like some hard music, and with movies, like especially horror, when you get that really hard like pounding music, it just goes together like peanut butter and jelly. It's amazing.
They do.
You can tell I don't listen to heavy metal when I'm like it's like peanut butter and jelly. You know, that was not. That's like the most lame example ever.
Peanut butter and jelly is awesome.
It is awesome.
It's really underrated.
It's true.
It's awesome.
And
I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich like over the break, and I was like, yes.
This is what life is.
They're so good. I don't know what it is, but it's like, yeah.
It's nostalgia. That's what it is.
It is, but also it's just good even if you didn't eat it as a kid, I think. I stand by it. I can't explain it. I stand by it.
Well, good. I'm glad you had that moment. I don't know what to say about that, but
no one ever does.
So, from Devil's Candy to sandwiches.
Cut that out. It's okay.
So, now that no one's listening to the episode, we're no, I'm just kidding. They're like, he was talking about heavy metal, and then he veered off into.
We started talking about sandwiches.
Not just any
peanut butter jelly.
No.
So.
We had a song about that in the South too when we were in high school. Did you guys have that song too?
It's peanut butter jelly time. That song.
It's peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Where you at?
I think the whole world.
Yeah.
I think it was
the
like
whole
a viral.
world had that song, girl.
I didn't know some of the stuff like from high school. I'll be like, remember this song? And everybody will be like, no.
So, but no, you have to. Anyway, moral of the story is you have to watch Devil's Candy because it really is.
Okay.
I think from a literature standpoint, there's
Don't
some
worry,
very
Mary Kay. You will watch it because it's when I remember when I told you I had a list on my planner of the movies I wanted to do. This was like right somewhere at the very top. Maybe
I have been preaching the gospel
we'll let Eric
of Devil's
be our
Candy.
guest.
Oh, I would love it.
Yeah.
Literally
done.
After I watched it, I was like literally all over like in horror groups and like to people I was like messaging. I was like, Devil's Candy. You gotta watch Devil's Candy right now. Watch it. Ethan Embry's the greatest thing ever. It's my favorite family in a horror movie ever too. I just gotta throw that out there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do this really quickly and then I'm gonna close it out. So with the foundation built, I want to talk about your current relationship with the genre, kind of what you're watching. Can you just name one or two titles that you've watched recently that kind of stand out to you?
Okay, so the movie that I saw most recently that was technically horror that I loved, that is also a recent movie, was that movie Thoroughbreds with Anya Taylor-Joy and Olivia Cooke.
You're off my payroll, princess. Life needs to knock you around a little.
Wow. You hate him. Ever think about killing him?
That's an idea.
You're gonna blackmail me into killing your stepdad?
Totally.
I haven't seen that yet.
That was in it. Well, it wasn't in the theaters for very long because it was an independent, I think, deal. But it's really good. They said Heathers meets American Psycho, and that is correct.
Ooh.
So it was really good. I think it was really well written and really well acted. And that, I think, comes out later this month. So that's what I watched most recently that I was like, yes, like, oh, it was so funny. And then it snapped to real, like, real quick. So, and I like that because I think that's hard to do.
Yeah. And then, Megan, what about you? Have you had anything specific?
As far as watching, I'm not watching anything super spectacular. I'm just always rewatching all my classics. But I've been listening to some new, like, audio drama horror podcast.
Okay.
I am re-listening to Tanis, which if you are kind of like a sci-fi horror kind of person and you know anything kind of about Tanis, that is a rabbit hole you do want to get lost down. That is a beautifully done podcast.
So Tanis, like Tanis Leaves, right? Is that what it's?
Like the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific Northwest, where weird, eerie things happen and people disappear, like the runner wanted, please apply kind of thing.
So nothing like what I just referenced, because
nothing
that's
like what you referenced.
Okay, because
that's from Rosemary's Baby. I got you.
Baby.
I know what you're talking about.
No, it's actually because I haven't seen Rosemary's Baby. I listened to your episode and I was like, I got to see Rosemary's Baby, but I'm a big fan of the original 1932 Mummy with Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
And I love its sequels. Mm-hmm. And the sequel, they bring back the mummy using Tanis leaves. Yeah. He like grinds it up and then it somehow turns to a liquid. And then he gives it, like dry leaves turn to a liquid somehow. And then he gives it to the mummy and he comes back. I don't remember. But I just remember like they kept saying, Tanis leaves. And I was like, why are they saying it like that? Now we have all this information. I think we can have a really good episode about Ed Gein, his influences, why people like true crime in the first place, why it's gripped so many people. And I should probably share what I have just watched recently, but I'm going to go ahead and do that in part 2 of this episode. So you're going to have to come back and hear that.